Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman Podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji.
Welcome back to another episode of The Deconstructed Woman. Today we have Alyssa and my book club friends. We've been talking about doing a podcast, and one of the things that we talked about doing on this episode was talking about how we're at different stages of our life and how starting friendships has been something that led a lot of us to join a book club. And now we've been together for probably close to 5 years. And so it was interesting that all of us had similar sort of origin stories to how we ended up in a book club. So I'm going to open it up and I'm going to introduce Sue, who's one of our book club members, as well as Karen. And then we've got just Alyssa and myself. So there's 4 of us on this podcast today. And so ladies, jump in and talk about what are your thoughts about making friends at different points in your life and where you are at your stage of life so that it'll give us a little context to what you're speaking about.
So I find it really interesting because all my children are grown now, and I work in a position where I'm 100% remote. This is in my basement, and my company is in Arizona. We do a lot of things to try and connect being on video, but I also recently moved a few years ago to a neighborhood where it is unincorporated, and we have no sidewalks, and we have big yards. And so you really don't see your neighbors. So there's those challenges, a new job, older children, living in a neighborhood where it's not highly populated with families and neighbors, older, younger, newer, that you interact with. It's really been an interesting dynamic, really since the pandemic, actually, for me. That really was the start of the change of everything pretty much.
So Karen, have you tried anything, or what have you tried in terms of trying to connect with your neighbors? Like I can imagine, do you have a sense of like neighborhood within your subdivision, or is it really pretty separate for each person doing their own
Pretty
thing?
dysfunctional neighborhood. That's not say that aloud on a podcast, but we do. It's interesting because we found when we moved here, nobody talked to each other. And there weren't a lot of homes. I think there were 17 homes at the time. And there were like, everybody was close prior. And then there was this big like breakup. Like people left, moved. And that's how we ended up buying the house we had, is because of this big division within the neighborhood. So we've been working on becoming a little more social, but it really isn't like what I was used to in my old neighborhood, where you would see a garage door open, like how our houses are facing. I don't even know if my neighbors were out half the time, if they're home even, because you don't see that unless you go outdoors to look. And I'm hopeful that we've gotten a lot of new families that just built homes this past year. So we have 4 new homes that have come in. And always make a point. There's some neighbors that will do things, but it's just not what I'm used to. I was always like, we used to sit on the driveway when the kids were young and you'd watch them play. You'd go over and play games in the evening while the kids were downstairs in the basement. There'd be survivor parties where you'd go over to someone's house, things like that.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's just not the same. I actually get invited to the next neighborhood over because they're very social over there, and go to tree parties or Christmas Eve. But I've met a lot of people just from that, which is nice. Walking and ran into a neighbor I used to work with at the hospital. And she's, hey, why don't you come do this? And then people got to know us, and they recognize me as the lady who walks her dogs all the time.
You found a neighborhood family,
Right.
just not your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll work. That'll work. How about you, Sue? What stage in life are you, and what are your thoughts about friends and making friends?
So I am older, and I have 1 child. And when we came together in this book club 2019, I was an empty nester, and I found that the empty nesting wasn't just that my only child was at college and moving on, but some of the mom friends I had at the time had also dissipated. I had a group that was pretty social, and with our kids all in different schools and doing different things. After high school, that group dissipated. And in 2019, I was feeling a little bit of drift, and with that, and also some friendships that just naturally in the course of time faded, and maybe I didn't nurture them in the same way that maybe I should have, or I was too busy to do or whatever. But in 2019, I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to reach out and join a group, and I was also going to run a 5K. Those were my two goals for 2019. And so weirdly, this Facebook posting for what happening in our town about this gal who's going to start a book club. And I was like, well, what the heck? We have a pretty safe town. I'm going to be okay if I go to this stranger's house. And yeah, saw a couple of you that I knew from our hospital. And so that's how I got started. I'm very out of my comfort zone because I'm very introverted. And it was just really something that I challenged myself to do in 2019 too, because if you want something different, you have to do something different. So I just was like, that is what I'm going to do. And this book club survived the pandemic. And it was really something that we had. Like Karen, I work remotely, and that can really be isolating. And like I said, I'm an empty nester, and I'm my neighborhood very social. So I don't quite have that, but it was just having people with like interests. I think it's harder to find once you lose that child connection. And then you're really on your own searching for a group where you feel like you fit in with like values and interests. And I think I felt lucky in this way that those of us that kind of survived the evolution of the book club are in many ways similar and then dissimilar enough to be interesting and engaging and with our shared ideas and stuff like that. I think it's hard, and I think it's something that for me, somebody like me who's really introverted, I really had to challenge myself to do it.
And Alyssa, you're at a different spectrum than the three of us are, Karen, Sue, and myself. You were an early member of this book club, and how did you get involved with little ones in your house?
Yeah, the book club, I had actually joined a bunch of different ones through different libraries and things like that. So similar to what Sue said, I saw the Facebook post and decided that this would be like a really fun thing to join. I think the book club I was in before was like a book club, and I was in so if it was in 2019, so I was like mid-30s and was like, I'm good with reading that many YA books. I want to get and delve into some different genres. And that's how I came to the book club, was like the same route I think we all really did, was just taking a leap of faith, jumping in. But I will say that for me, having small kiddos, I think I've been listening to all three of you, and I was like, oh, I want to take a little bit of each of what you've said, because I think that you were talking about like finding friends who have the same values and things like that. And I'm finding that to be really important right now, especially with my kids being as highly influenced as they are. They range from, if somebody's listening to the podcast for the first time, so I have 4 kids. My oldest is 9 and my youngest is 1. And so I think I'm trying to find friends who share our same values so that their kids have some of the similar thoughts, ways of conducting themselves, if you will. And I live in a very active neighborhood, but because all the families are so busy, we don't actually see each other right now. So some of that might be because we have very little kids who depend on us significantly. I'm still nursing one of them. So I think in some ways I'm looking forward to that time when the kids, like what you were describing, Karen, like the kids can go play and we can sit around and actually have conversations. Because right now I still have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who depend on me for almost everything. My 7 and 9-year-old are a little bit more independent, but it's definitely an ongoing thing. So I look forward to those days. But then also, I think I've said on the podcast before, my mom made her friends when I was in high school. Those are her friends that to this day are her core friends. She's been with them for 20 plus years. And so I anticipated that would be like, if I'm following in her footsteps as my kids get older, really developing those relationships so that I can carry those into my later years. But I think that those are good points, that sometimes as your children move out of the house, it may not pan out the way that you think it will. It's hard to tell. I think I have some really good friends, but again, I don't see them as much as I'd like to. I have to make a really conscious effort to say, hey, let's go out for coffee. Let's go do something.
let's spend some time just one-on-one, because usually when we have our kids around, we're having like those half conversations where you're having conversation, but it's interrupted about every 2 minutes. Somebody needs something. And so I don't really get to have those core conversations unless the kids are elsewhere.
I will say, just to remind you guys, that I didn't actually respond to the Facebook page. Karen actually invited me because she realized that the house that you all were meeting was like four doors down from my house. And so Karen reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you want to join this book club, but we're right in your neighborhood, right on your street." And so that's what motivated me to join, because I don't necessarily know that I was looking to join a group, but then when it was so close to home and I could just walk down the block, that seemed like that was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And then two of the people I used to work with are right in that same group. So it just happened to be like, oh, it's like walking down memory lane and how we all used to work together. But yeah, it's ironic that I wasn't necessarily looking for a group, but I actually have always made friends through work. And so most of my oldest and dearest friends have some connection to a work situation that I'm in. And so differently than you, Sue, and maybe you, Karen, I don't really have friends in my neighborhood per se. And I also don't have any friends that I made with my daughter, her high school friends. We all interacted with each other because of their activities, but I didn't really develop any close relationships with anyone through my neighborhood or through my friends. It's always been my work that I've had relationships that I've kept together for 20 years. And so we all have different ways of how we're comfortable making friends. And so when my daughter got launched and went to college, I didn't really feel like an empty nester because the people that were important in my life were still there. And I didn't lose a majority of my friends like Sue did with her son going off to college, or with Karen. I feel like even if I've changed neighborhoods, I don't think I would, because most of my friends are remote friends because don't live near me. And so I've just managed relationships from a distance all these years. So interesting that we all value relationships and friendships, and the way that they've entered or been sustained have been different for each one of us. Sue, you were saying something about, and I really want to hear you talk more about it because I think it's really interesting, this metaphor of like empty nesting, and how that you had an experience of, you were not only experiencing empty nesting at home with your son going off to college or working or whatever you did, but also that it was creeping into other parts of your life. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, now that I'm on the other side of and I only had one, so I think you get super engaged. Even though I was a full-time mom, when I wasn't at work, I was a full-time worker. And so when you are a working mom, I think you compensate by being gone during the day, like really enmeshing in what your child is doing. And it was very easy. He had a nice group of friends whose parents were fun to hang out with, and we developed social relationships with a core group of moms that kind of we did things. We went to the theater, we went out to dinner, we would try to meet at least like once a month to do something momish, and made that a point of being social with each other. And of course, some of that really was still sharing what the boys were doing and plans for school and how the activities were going, and then college and things like that. When they graduated together, all the boys did, then why we tried to maintain that socially through those first years of college, I found over time, some of the other mothers, either they had younger kids, so they were involved in that, or they were involved in what was happening outside. Some went back to work. And over time, that core group dissipated and we were getting together less and less. And so I felt not only had my son moved on to college, but that group of people that I was social with, then they dissipated, or I found myself maybe only seeing them once a year, holidays or something like that. And so I felt like that whole empty nest experience trickled into my social life too, so that by the time my son was a senior in college, which was 2019, I was looking around to not really having a lot of social stuff on my calendars. And I do make friendships through work, but for some reason, I guess I've always just been very professional in the relationship and kept it very friendly at within the work structure, but now pursuing something more socially outside of work. So at that point, I just felt like I was an empty nester, and those connections with those other mom friends had dissipated, and it was time to not depend on my kid as the reason why had those social connections, but to really start seeking as a very advanced age grown up new social circle and people. Yeah. And when I was running too, like Karen, running is very social too. So having running and book club in 2019, I was busy and I was feeling very connected up till the pandemic happened, I would say.
So one of the things that I read in like friendships and as we're adulting is that we are more, and I think Alyssa, you touched upon this, we're more deliberate about the type of people that we let into our lives. And that could be just personality or values or similarities. How much of that, I never thought about it until I read about it to say, oh, how deliberate was I with friends? Can you guys talk about that with your friendships at different times in your life? And if you feel like that is true for adulting differently than when you're in college and meeting a lot of people, but whether have young children or when we're empty nesters, like what do you feel like you're more deliberate, or are we at the age that will take anybody? Because I make friends.
Oh, no, I was going to jump in because I was going to say, I think I just feel people out. So I don't know if this is common for people, but I remember going out to get dinner with a couple of moms who our kids all went to preschool together. And it just did not jive well for me. I just felt really awkward. And I was like, this is not my group. These are not my people. And so through that experience, I was like, okay, like back to the drawing board. And so now, at least for me in this stage of my life, if I meet somebody and I have all my kids screaming in the background, sorry for that. But if I'm out like at my daughter's softball game and I happen to sit next to another parent and we start talking and we just have a really good conversation, I try to foster that friendship and that relationship because I think sometimes I can be really awkward. And if somebody meets me in that awkwardness and we can laugh something off, or they have a good sense of humor, or I don't know, if they just bring joy into my life, I want to keep that friendship. And I definitely tend to steer clear of people who are maybe a little bit more negative, or I can tell it's just, I don't know, it can look so many different ways, but I don't know, that's my 2 cents because I'm thinking about just some of the people that I've gravitated towards have been more positive or have just been a breath of fresh air. And especially in like really tense times, and we've had all out brawls at softball games where the coaches and the parents were all getting into it, and we're all sitting there, wow, this is not our jam. Like, we're not going to jump in there. And so again, I kind of gravitate towards people who are bringing to the table something that I'm looking for. And that might be in this phase of life just because I have a lot of chaos, or in general, I'm not sure.
I agree totally. I really think that
Yeah, I do too.
like to find people who have similar interests as I do, because I love outdoors. I love being with my dogs. I love reading, cooking. Those are the things I want to do. And so I'd like people who enjoy similar things and that you have something that you're comfortable talking about and you're not stilted. You're not just sitting there with people. You're participating in the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like interest, or sometimes, and I think about this sometimes when you guys are talking in book club, when we deviate from the book and go off into something else. And I have a lot of admiration for the courage, actually, I'll feel like a lot of you have when Robin buys a camper and and really goes all in their outdoor adventure, and seeing her and Karen's adventures on Joji as she explores educational opportunities and things like that. It's very inspiring to me, and I just feel very appreciative to be around you guys. And it really was something when I changed jobs in May. You guys were really inspirational to me. And I can be brave. And yeah, I think that's the other thing too, are people that inspire you or that you admire, that, share adventures with, just even if it's just, through listening, knowing, and I like that component too. And also, I think kindness and just being open to different ideas and being respectful that in many ways we're the same, but we're also different. And we have had a lot of very good conversations, and the judgment is tabled, or the ideas are explored in an open-minded way. And I think those are the people you also want to spend time with. And you want to develop, you feel safe to develop relationships.
Yeah, you're right, Sue. Because really, there's been a lot of vulnerability, I think, in a lot of our discussions, either about books or even when we've veered off into another topic based on that. And that everybody's been really supportive and asked really good questions when we're having those conversations. And it's one of the things that makes book club really fun for us.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have to laugh because I'm probably the only person who's resistant to getting new members. I like our closed group. Every time I hear people are joining, I'm like, this is a closed group. We have our tribe. This is our tribe. And so as you guys were all talking, I'm thinking, when was the last time I made a new friend? I think it was book club, because I am not open to relationships. I feel like I have the people in my life that I want, and I don't really want to have superficial relationships. And so for me, I want to give 100% to the people that I already have in my life, and time is so limited in certain ways, and mostly because of work. And I realized, Sue, when you were talking about your job, I've been in my current job for 7 years, and I don't consider any of them close friends of mine because of exactly what you said. I'm the boss of those people. And so therefore, I don't have relationships with them on a personal level. I don't go out to lunch with any of them. I don't go out to dinner with any of them. And and there's an unstated rule at work that don't have a personal relationship with somebody that reports up through you. So if I take one of them out, I take all of them out.
Right.
And so that I think is what you were speaking of, because I think you were a manager, or I was. Yeah. So differently than that. But I also was reflecting on the fact that, I really haven't made a new friend in a long time.
I say I'm not the best friend. I won't talk to somebody for a really long time and I can reach out and we're instantly connected again. But it's really important for me to have friends who are okay with that, because you get really busy. I like, you're mentioning camping, or love to travel camp and go places. And so just the availability is not always there. But Robin and I haven't talked for years before, and we always pick up right where we were. I have a friend, Diane, we're the same way. Like, hey, we should do lunch. Like, yeah, let's get it on the calendar. Let's do it, because we know it's not going to happen otherwise. And I'm really fortunate that I have friends who understand me and aren't really needy, because I don't do needy when it comes to friends, that you have to be engaged with them 100%, and it's about them. I like a give take, and to know that we're all in different spots as we go through our life and what's important to us at that time and where we are emotionally too. You just need some space sometimes from people. Just they can be there. It's true.
And Karen, I'm a transplant from Michigan. So my college years were in Michigan. And so when I came here and made some friends here, but that's the nature of the relationship I have with all my college friends. And so a lot of my friends, like today, I talked to a person I probably literally haven't talked to in, how old am I? So probably at least 30 years. And it was just so, even though we had to like level set who we are, where we are, that feeling of, oh, we grew up together. Like there was no, I hate when you have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't called you, or you haven't called me. And like that when you have a relationship where you don't have to have those niceties, and you just are like, okay, so we have this gift of time now. Let's take advantage of that. And so I really do love relationships where you don't have to explain yourself, and it's very natural.
Yeah, it feels familiar, and this is what I've been up to. What have you been up to? Let's just keep going.
I was going to say I had a recent experience like that, where I met up with an old friend from college in Chicago, and I actually was pretty nervous because we hadn't talked or hadn't really connected in such a long time. And so I went into it apprehensive. Is our friendship
can our friendship withstand the time that we've been apart and we're in two different phases of life? Is this possible for us to continue this friendship, or is this going to be like a breakup? And it ended up that we literally picked up where we left off. But I think that had I not tried to make that connection, or at least like seen which way it was going to go, I think that it would have felt I could have lost that friendship. So I would say, like, to that point, sometimes picking up the phone and calling somebody may be an opportunity to rekindle or pick up where you left off. And sometimes, because we were talking and Sue was talking about taking risks and pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone once in a while, I think that sometimes friendships can just pick up where they left off. But you won't ever know unless you actually step out to do that.
Well, I know, Alyssa, you and I talked about pruning friendships at one of our podcasts. And I think about the one relationship that I had to draw just a pretty stark line in the sand and say, you know what, this is not going to last, is because it was very similar to a person, what Karen said about high maintenance and wanted to be enmeshed with me. And I was at a time in my life where I didn't want that. And I needed to spread my own wings and understand who I am. But having said all that, I guess I want to ask you guys, how successful have you guys been in having a close friend that you didn't want to lose, but be able to renegotiate the rules of your relationship? And did that work for you?
I have not been successful with that. I do have to say, I've had two friendships, one girl I knew since I was in first grade, and maybe distance as she moved across the country, we could have maintained that friendship. And it's not that we don't. Our kids are about the same age, and I'm so very interested in how her kids are doing and things like that. But it's a very distant relationship. But I did have a friendship where, like my soulmate friend, I think that you're very fortunate to come across once really in your lifetime, a person that really gets you. And she was really like a sister to me. And at a time that I needed to pull back, she needed a lot more than I was giving her. And it just, when I reached out, when I was ready, it was like a friendship breakup. And it was really hard. It's still a loss that I feel a lot, especially like this time of year, I feel a lot. But I was too late in trying to negotiate. And I pulled too far back in a protective way for what I was going through. And then when I reached back out, she was like, I don't know that I can trust that you'll be there when I need you. And yeah, and I've been divorced, and that the end of that friendship was at least equally as hard, just going through my divorce and loss. So I have not been super successful in some of my longer term relationships in negotiating either a distance friendship or in negotiating new boundaries. Boy, I'm just super honest on your podcast.
No, but and I was going to say that these, number one, we're a group that we feel safe with, and I'm sorry this is on a podcast, but at the same time, I would expect nothing less from the four of us, because we are so used to that trusting relationship. The one thing I will say is that in my breakup with my friend, I was probably your friend. I don't know. I was both people in that, because I needed to pull away, but it was also because she wanted something that was unrealistic of me when I was going through my divorce. Like, she would have been very happy with me and Neela to move in with her and her husband and her son and live with them. No, it was just like, no, I can't do all that. I need my own space. I need I need to redefine who I am. And I can't do that with an automatic, but I know that she took it really difficult, and she took it very hard, and she gave me an ultimatum. It's either us or them. And I'm sorry. It's really me. But if that doesn't include you, that's probably for the best. And so I do feel like there are some people, and I'm sorry you went through that experience, because it also sounds like maybe she was a more than, like, you weren't there for her because the reaction was so strong that one could argue that maybe there was more going on with her than you might even be aware of. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, but she was such a quality, lovely person, and still is, I'm sure, and was a fantastic, wonderful friend to me. I mourn it, but I hold no resentment that she let that go and did what was best for her. But it does make me sad. I could have done better. And it changed me. I'm not ever going to be that person again, where I'm going to withdraw so much that I can't recognize when other people need me. Wow, that makes sense. I know. More honesty in the conscience.
That's right. At a point in time, Sue, were you able to provide that? Sometimes you just emotionally can't.
I know.
So it's not like it was intentional that
I
you
would
purposely
not.
make that decision.
No.
But I think that you put
Mhm.
yourself at
I
risk
would not.
sometimes. You give more than you have, space to give, and then you're losing out personally from some of that because
Mhm.
you have to take that route somewhere else.
I was not good. I was not good for anybody at the time. I just really was like, it was not good. And so I thought I'm protecting. Withdrawing is protection. But that isolation, which was really self-protection, was an unexplained distance, I think, for my friend, and too hurtful to maybe really ever be bridged again. So at the very least, I think older and wiser, and when you know better, you do better. If I have that happen again, and I have a little bit, I just explain, look, it's not about you, it's not about us, it's just about me, and I'm going to take this time, but I love you, and if you really need me, but for right now, that's what this is. So I think you're constantly growing and learning, and so I do feel like that loss was learning too.
Thanks for sharing that, Sue. I know that sounds like that was a very difficult time and even memory. I can feel your pain of that loss of that friendship. And who knows, maybe that friend will reemerge and something might happen in the future to change that. But taking the turn to the future of our book club, do you think that we're going to be a book club that is together for 20 years and at some point takes trips together? Because I have a couple of friends of mine, not close friends of mine, but it's like people I know who've been in book clubs for 20 years and they've become like their travel group and they've become other things. Do you think that, what do you see for our future as a book club? Do you think we'll do some of that
I
stuff?
think we should travel together.
Yeah.
I think that would be,
Right.
I think we're totally game for that.
Yeah.
I think we all, would bring enough sense of organization, i.e. Robin and spirit of adventure. There's a lot of, I think we should totally do that. I think we could challenge ourselves to do it. I think our future is defined by us. And I think we made it through, as a relatively new book club, we made it through a pandemic. In fact, I was just thinking about when we did Secret Santa and we were running around each other's houses at nighttime, doing a ring and dash with the Secret Santa present. And I was thinking, gosh, we were really fun. I think we could totally do that. I hope they're reaching out. I think the fact that we've had Dana moved for her professional thing and she's still a part. And I think it's equally valued. And so I think it's
Probably because of the pandemic that we were successful with Dana moving because we did do the Zoom calls.
So I think we could.
I think we could too. I think we could too, just because I feel like we've got the history and the ability. Alyssa has a lot of young ones, so I'm not sure she'd be able to join us, but
I'm right on board.
I think she
Sitting somewhere reading a book. Like my whole dream was like all of us sitting on some deck reading and then discussing like what we read and not having any children interrupt that. Like I'm right there.
I'm glad you said that, Alyssa. I was hoping to build in some permission if you needed to bow out gracefully, but I'm up for, you have active mother-in-law and father-in-law and parents that, we could definitely create some kind of a schedule for all of us to go away and be together on some beach reading.
Or definitely. Or around the campfire.
Different things.
These ladies, I might actually pitch a tent for.
I don't know if Joji would do that.
Yeah, and now you're gonna.
That may not happen.
But knowing how kind Robin is, maybe I can use her, or I can rent a one-person camper, and we'll work it out. There's got to be a hotel close by. I can sneak out and sneak back in.
She'll
No
hang out for the
worries,
fire,
no
but then she's
worries.
out.
That's
we
right.
go.
That's
She'll do the
right.
s'mores and then she's out.
That's right. Any final thoughts about the challenges or the benefits of having friendships at different times in your life before we wrap this up?
I think it does take a certain sense of courage as you get older. I don't know. Life always feels like high school. It feels like you never get away from it. You're always afraid of something. I think you have to be brave in your friendships, but I think it's so worth it. I think it's so worth it. And it's not just that we're on the other side of, most of us are on the other side of the half-century mark, and time feels like it needs to be utilized differently. But I think it's worth it. I think putting yourself out there, even if it's only successful in a transient kind of way, you're just a better, different person through the people that you connect with. And so it's worth
I also think you need to be thankful for the people who are in your life and recognize what they bring to the table. That, like, what if this person wasn't here? How would my life be different? And let them know that you're thankful that they're a part of your life and that you're a part of theirs.
And I will say, Karen, on that note, my best friend from college, this is her, actually today is her, she died 5 years ago today.
Yeah.
And it was so unexpected to me that I still have feelings about not having enough time with her, even though we had known each other for so many years. But we also had kids together, and we went to graduate school together. We did all these things together. And I think it makes me think about you, Sue, and the loss of your friendship, to say that exactly what Karen was saying. It's like I do believe the universe brings people into our lives when we need them and for the time that we have.
Right.
And as much as I can be angry about the fact that my friend is no longer, literally not part of this world any longer, and it makes me feel like there's a hole in my heart for that.
Right.
I also think about how much she contributed to my life when she was here. And as much as I think I should have known, I could have prevented it. Maybe I should have said something. How did I miss all this time? Because we didn't talk every week. But she was such a huge part of so many years of my life that I also have to resign myself to, it is what it is. And I have to be grateful for the time I had and not to take any friendships for granted, because you don't know how much time you have. And you just have to really thank people for being in your life and enriching our lives, because it really is a gift.
So I just wanted to say I'm thankful for each of you and for this opportunity to talk about this, because I think that we've all opened up and said some true things to our hearts, and how that I've had some of the same experiences. And I think it came out in our episode, like Joji was mentioning about pruning friendships. But as you were talking, Sue, I was like, I know that I had a friendship similar to that, and it continues to break my heart every time like something comes up that makes me think of her. And so I think that we've all kind of had different experiences at different times in our lives, but friendships are so important. We are social animals, and I just appreciate having this conversation with each of you.
Ladies, thanks for taking your precious weekend time to talk to us on this podcast. You know that this is a passion project for Alyssa and I. We love talking about things that are important to women. And you guys are some of our most important women friends. So thank you for coming on and sharing some of your most personal details that most of us didn't know about before this conversation. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. And to our listeners, hope you enjoyed this episode with us from our book club group. And as always, we would love to hear from you. If you'd like to share your thoughts and drop us a note, reach out to us in Facebook or through our podcast forum that you can reach out to us. But if you have any feedback for us, please let us know. If you'd like to join us on a podcast, let us know that as well, as we are interested in all different aspects of what makes us as women unique. And as we talked about, precious gifts to other people in our lives. So thank you so much. Talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends. rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.